Hello there. Sorry I haven't been putting any videos up lately. Life's been very hectic here, but I've got quite a few ideas for videos. Plus, I've had a few questions over the last month which I need to answer, so there'll be many more coming. One of the questions I had recently was this lettering style with another word embedded in it. And you can see this lettering is curved as well, this background lettering. Um, if I select it, just ignore this, I've hidden the frame I had around it. I'm just going to show you the lettering today, and I am in Creator level, so you can do this in Creator level or the Designer Plus level, of course. So if I select the large word, we can see what sort of size we're looking at. This is a width of 113.36 millimeters and a height of 57.82 millimeters. So it's quite large, but a nice size for a badge or a label or an embellishment on some bag or something like that. So you can make it bigger. But at this size, I've left this word Carol. This lettering here is still a lettering object. The large letters are not. I've had to convert them to normal objects so that I could remove the parts underneath, and also I did change the fill of these to a step fill because they are much larger than the recommended size for that font. So there's a few things that you're going to learn in this exercise about those topics. So without further ado, let's get into it and start a new design. So something I don't always remember to let you know or tell you at the beginning of when you're starting a design is when you start a new design, it's called design 1, 2 or 3, depending, 4, 5, 6, depending on how many designs you've been making in that session on the software. And if it autosaves, it will autosave as design 1. It's probably a good idea right before you start, if you've got something in mind, is to save the design. You don't have to have anything in the design space to save it, and you can give it a name. I'm just going to close that one altogether. I won't save any changes. And you don't have to have anything in the design space. You can give it a name and a location right at the beginning, and that way it won't get lost and you'll know what the name is. It'll have some relevance to you rather than just design 1. Otherwise you end up with, if you're putting them in different places, you can end up with 10 design 1s. If you're trying to find the one you want, it's almost impossible. So the first thing I'm going to do is go File, Save As, and I'm going to call this, I'm just going to call it Love Lettering. Okay, and I'll show you where I prefer that you put your designs. So if you go to the Libraries tab on the left and expand that out with the arrow, you'll find an embroidery option under Libraries, and if you expand that out, and I'll just make this a bit bigger, you can make these windows bigger in version 9, which is great. So, and you can expand this area here so you can read it all. So this is actually the folders that are in Embroidery Library in the software, so it's a really good place to save your designs. So expand out My Embroidery, and there you have, I've got my cutting files. I'm not sure if you get that with the Creator level. If you don't worry about it, but you will have a folder called My Designs and another folder called My Machine Files, where you can save the formats for your sewing machine in. The My Designs will be your art format, which is the one you're going to save so that you can edit it at any time, especially after a test sew. If you have changes you need to make. You want to make them on the art format and then re-export it as a machine file. So I'm going to expand the My Designs, because in that I have actually got different folders that I've created. So I'm going to choose the lettering one, and I'm just going to go save. I've got Love Lettering as my name. It's going to be an Art 90 file, and it's going into My Designs Lettering. So I'll save that. And you'll notice up here that the tab changes to Love Lettering. Okay, now we're going to go to our lettering and monogramming toolbox in the toolboxes and expand that out by clicking on it, left clicking on it. And we're going to right click, excuse me, right click on the lettering icon, and that will open up the dialog for the lettering. It's quicker to do it this way than to type it in the default font and then have to go into the object properties, which takes you here to make all the alterations. You may as well set the lettering up correctly from the start. So we're going to enter the word love in uppercase in the text box up here. So hold our shift key down and type in love, and it will be uppercase. We're then going to go down to the font here, and I chose the Drifter font. You can choose whatever font you like, but you want a nice blocky clear font for the background lettering, and you will get an indication of what it looks like down the right hand side here. Now, because I've got both Creator level and Designer Plus level on my computer, I may have more fonts than the Creator level showing up here, so just bear that in mind. So I'm going to look for the Drifter font, and they're in alphabetical order, so I need to go up, and there it is there. And you can see here its recommended size is between 8 and 20 millimeters, and we're going to do it a lot bigger than that. So that's why I said it's not a good idea to leave it as a satin stitch, because your satin stitches will be too long. But we'll choose that font, and you'll see it here. And we're going to enter in here the size, the height of the lettering. And we're going to enter 40 millimeters. So if you're not in metric, it's a good idea to change to metric for most of your digitizing, because you can get much finer size and measurements in metric than you can in inches, and you can always change it back to inches later. But while you're working through the class as I do, I'd prefer that you had 10 millimeters, and that's done up here in next to your options icon. You can change from it. If you're in Imperial, it'll be US up here, and you just drop down the arrow and choose metric. Okay, so 40 millimeters in height, and click OK. And we're just going to left click on the workspace to generate the stitches for that. Now it is in satin stitch, as you can see, and it is a very long satin stitch. So if you look down here, you've got lots of stitches ending halfway in because they're long stitches. These are really long stitches. If I put my grid on, which will give you some sort of guideline of how big these stitches are, each of these squares are 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter. So these are really pushing the limit of a satin stitch, 5 to 6 centimeters long, some of them, maybe even more here. So long satin stitches like that, the machine will stitch them, but they're going to be very loose and they're going to easily catch on things, so it's not recommended to leave lettering in satin stitch this big. Okay, we're going to select the lettering now, and it should be selected by default, but if it's not, click on it so it's selected, and you'll see the handles around it. If you go out of true view, you will see it turn pink. I'll take my grid off again so that that's not confusing us, and zoom to fit, which is this one. So that's filled the screen. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit actually, because I need to bend this lettering now. So while you need it in still as lettering to use the next tool, which is your elastic lettering. and that's found under the Edit tab up in the top menu here. So if I click on that and you come down, you'll see an option here called Elastic Lettering, and there are various options. We're going to choose the curved one now, but you can play around with the other ones later on and have a look in your reference manual for what sorts of shapes you can create with the other ones. But I'll click on curved, and you'll see when I do that I get a frame around here, and I've got a tooltip there, so I'll just close that for the moment. But you'll see that there is a frame around it, and there are two nodes, round nodes, one here in the middle of the top and one down the bottom. They're kind of a turquoise colour. Okay, so you can move those nodes individually. So what it does is it stretches, and you can't move it sideways, but you can move it up and down. So what it does is create an arched frame for the lettering to fit in. So I could actually pull this one down as well. So you can shape your lettering into this curved shape. I'm going to undo twice to get it back to normal. If you want to move both nodes at the same time so that they have the same arc, you can hold your control key down, then hover over till you get your move icon and just left click and drag both at the same time. I think I went this way, down. So there we go. So now we've got our curved lettering. We're going to select that lettering again so that frame disappears. We're now in the select mode. If you want to play around with that curve again, you change your mind, you can go back up to the reshape tool, and when you click on the reshape tool, the frame will reappear. Click on the select tool and you'll go back to select, and that frame will be gone. So while we've got it selected, we're going to just come down to the fills here and left click on the step fill. So now if I go to True View, you'll see that more clearly. I've got a step fill, which will stitch out much neater. I'm going to break this apart twice because with lettering, if you have a word, you need to, the first break apart will break it up into letters, and the second break apart will break it apart from being a lettering object to a normal embroidery object, and that's what I want. If you had a sentence, you would have to break apart 3 times, but if you've got a word, you only need to break apart twice, and we can do that in our edit toolbox. So while it's selected, we're going to go edit toolbox here, so not the edit up here, the edit toolbox, and we can come down to our break apart icon. I'm going to left click once. I'll just change in my color film here, so I'll undo that so you can see what happens. So to start off with, even in show individual objects, it's one lettering object. I'm just going to make that a bit bigger. There we go. So it's one lettering, is a word is one object. So you need to break it apart, as I said. So here's my first break apart, and that breaks it apart into the individual letters. And then I'm going to select it again. So click on the top one, go down and hold my shift key down and click on the bottom one, and they'll all be selected. Go out of True View, they'll turn pink. And I'm going to break it apart again so that they become individual objects, embroidery objects, rather than lettering. So click on break apart, and you'll notice that if we go right down to the bottom, the E has broken apart into 2 separate objects. If I click on this one to select it, that's the middle part there, and then we've got the outer part there. So it's no longer a lettering object. You cannot use the lettering editing options anymore. These are now just embroidery objects in the shape of letters, yes, but they're not letters. Now we're going to create the text that's going to run through the middle of these letters. So we're going to go back to our lettering toolbox, and we're going to right click on the lettering again, and you can type your name in. So I used upper and lowercase, so uppercase to start it and lowercase for the rest. It's entirely up to you, but it is going to be a lot smaller, so I think lowercase is fine. And I'm going to choose the Guinevere font. So I'll click on here and go down to the Guinevere font. Here I've run into trouble because EFG, there is no Guinevere font in the creator level, but if you're in Designer Plus, you can use the Guinevere font. I'm going to have to think very quickly now and just choose another font. So I'll just have a quick look through down here. I want something fairly clear but fairly simple. Let's just go with the Hightower. See what that looks like. And I'm going to apply that and go, oh, actually I can just go OK. In the height, we need to put that back. It's still 40 millimeters from the previous lettering, so I'm going to enter 14 millimeters in there, which is the default size. This font can go up to 15 millimeters, so it's fine, and go OK. And now I need to left click, and there's my lettering there. I'm going to change the color to red so that it stands out and click off, and I'll go into True View to make it a little bit more clearer. Okay, so it's a little bit more spaced out than I would like actually, so I'm going to go select it and go to the reshape tool. With lettering and reshape, you can actually move these letters closer together. So I'm just going to move them individually. They've got a little pink diamond which allows you to move them individually. You can also shorten the whole thing with this arrow here, but I'm just going to move them to see what I think looks nice. Move that L a little bit out. Yep, I'm okay with that. So back to the select tool. So now I've got my name here, and as I said, you can choose any font you like. I'm going to now position my name over the lettering. Now, to get it centered from side to side, you can use the arrange tools. So I'll go into color blocks mode in the color film so that I can select the word love, and I'm going to group that because I want to use the alignment tools, and if they're not grouped, it'll align each individual letter. I want it to stay as a word for the moment, so that's why I've grouped it. And I'm going to hold down my shift key and select the word Carol, and I'm going to go to the arrange toolbox and align centers vertically, and that puts my word in a nice position in relation to the lettering underneath. Now, you can move it up and down. Because this lettering's curved, it might look a bit better a little bit lower. So if I just select the word Carol and use the down arrow, I can move it down a little bit, and that will keep it aligned vertically. If I'd have used the align centers horizontally, because of the curve, the word Carol would have actually come a bit higher because it's the distance from here to the bottom. So that's why I've used the arrows there, and I've got it in what I think is a nice position now. We're going to, with that name selected, now we're going to make the outline to go around it. So we're going to go to our edit toolbox and choose the outlines and offsets tool, and it will open up here. Now we want an offset outline, we don't want an object outline, so if you've got a tick in here, click on it to deselect it. And in your offset outlines, you're going to set the offset to 3 millimeters, which I seem to already have done, and we want an offset count of 1. We want a satin line, and we want the same color as our name, so I've done that. And Under the multiple objects, choose common offsets. So this is the multiple objects option, and you've got individual offsets or common offsets. We're going to go to common offsets, which will stop it going around each individual letter. So I'll click on that. Under the corners, I'm going to choose rounded because I want this to be a nice smooth curved shape. And I'm not going to include any holes because there is a hole here in the O, and I don't want that to be included. So I'm not going to include holes, and I'm going to go OK. And there is my outline. Now, you will notice here that I've got this funny little object here. It wasn't actually a hole. It's actually, the shape would have gone in here, around here and back out, but because it gets so narrow here, it's stopped. So if you get any of those funny little objects, all you need to do is go back into individual objects in your colour film and scroll down till you find them and select it and hit delete on your keyboard to remove it. The other thing I'm not real happy about is this really sharp point here. I don't like these long stitches, so I'm going to select that outline and just reshape it a little bit. Not always necessary, but you might find, see, just that tiny little movement there from here to there of that node by left-clicking and dragging, I've created a much nicer point there, and I think that will work a lot better. The rest I'm fine with. Just have a look here. It's getting quite tight there. I wonder if I delete that square node and delete that and see what happens. I can always undo if I don't like it. So I'll just press delete. Yep, and I might even try and get rid of that square node too. See what happens there. Delete. Yes, I've got a smoother curve around there. I got rid of a couple of square nodes. Let me just zoom right in. I'll just take this out a little bit. That's better. I've got a really nice stitching through there. So sometimes just tweaking your nodes. I'm going to make that one a curved node. That's better. You can just tweak those nodes. Right, I'm pretty happy with the rest of it, so we're all good. Once you've got your shape right, then you need to duplicate that outline. So we'll select it and right click on it. You can do this in the colour film and click on duplicate, and you'll have two on top of each other. The reason I've done this is because I want to actually make a stamp to cut out the shape from the blue lettering below. So we're going to change that duplicate to a step fill. So while it's selected, just come over to your fills and click on step fill. And I'm going to move it up 2 objects so that it is below the word love but above the word Carol. So to do that, I'm going to come up here to my move tools for the colour film. It's still selected, and I'm just going to go up 1 object. So that's the black upward pointing arrow, and then I'm going to go up another object. So now you can see the word Carol stitches after and the outline stitches after that, and the step fill is here. Now I want to use this as a cutting stamp. Now there is a default, and I'm going to use the remove overlaps tool, which is in your edit toolbox as well. But there's a default margin when you remove overlaps, because the remove overlaps tool is designed to remove unwanted stitching from underneath, but it will leave an overlap so that you don't get any gaps when you stitch. We're not going to get any gaps when we stitch because we've got this satin outline that's going to stitch over the top. Now if I zoom right in and go out of true view, you might be able to see here's the satin stitching, and it overlaps into the blue stitching here of the word love, and it overlaps the step fill. The step fill only comes halfway across the satin stitching. I've got it selected here so you can actually see it pink. So if we add another margin to that, we might not cut enough of the blue lettering away. So we actually want the step fill to cut right to the outer edge of the digitizing. So no margin. So what we need to do is go up to our hammer and spanner here and go to the Remove Overlaps tab. And here you can see the cutting overlap. Now by default it's on 1. I want you to change that for this design to 0. We're going to change it back when we've finished using it because it does not go back to the default by itself. You have to set it every time, and it's really easy to forget. And most of the time you do want an overlap, so we'll change this back later. But for the moment, we want it 0 and go OK. All right, now while that step fill is activated, the only thing it's on top of is the blue lettering. I go to oh, that's not helping. The blue lettering stitches first and then this step fill. So it will only cut through the blue lettering because of where we've positioned it in the colour film. So we can now go to the Remove Overlaps tool, and you will see, if we go up in the colour film, that we've got some little objects now in that lettering because it's been cut up by the piece here that we created. Let's go into True View and zoom to fit so we can see. And I'm going to now delete that cookie cutter because we don't need it anymore. So we're going to select it and delete it. And you can see here that the lettering has in fact been cut up into pieces. We've also got some travel runs that have been created, but then if I go out of True View, we'll have a look and see there are no travel runs that are actually going through the space. So that's okay, we'll leave it as is for now. Okay, back to True View. We'll go back into that hammer and spanner icon, which is your options icon, and go to the Remove Overlaps, and we'll put that back to the default of 1mm and go OK, and that'll be ready for next time you're digitizing then. Now, if we go out of True View, we can see that we've got quite a few jump stitches. They're not, you can't do anything about them if you haven't got anywhere to travel underneath. But also because we created objects, some of the start and end points aren't in really logical places either. So what we can do is, if we go into colour blocks, we can select, because we've chopped this about, the start and end points are in weird places, so we can select all that blue lettering. And if we go into our edit toolbox, we can click on the Apply Closest Join to reapply the closest join to those objects. The red objects are fine, you can't make them any better, but we can apply closest join. And you'll notice that quite a few of those jump stitches have gone, which neatens up the whole stitching process. You can't avoid some of them because there's nowhere to travel through these spaces to get from one object to the other. Maybe here you could travel up under that satin stitch to get to this object, but really in the scheme of things it's going to tie in and tie off. It's really up to you whether you want to put a path in here. If you don't know what a path is, it's just a running stitch from the end of one object to the start of another object of the same colour, and it runs underneath a third object, which may or may not be the same colour. And all that does is get rid of your tie off here, or actually, and a tie in, and gets rid of a jump stitch. It can speed up the stitch out, so you might want to do that. I have a video on creating paths, which I'll link to in the description below. All you need to do now, because you've already saved this design, is click on this little save icon here, and it will save it as is now and update that file for you. If you want to send it to your machine, you can either use, if you have a Bernina, you can write to your card or machine up here, or if you have another brand of machine, you can go up to the File menu item and export a machine file. Keep an art file though, so that, as I said, you can edit. So go and have a look at that video on pathing, because you may want to put that path in and eliminate a couple more jump stitches. But really, that's the only if you wanted to go from this object down to here, you'd have to go right around that satin stitching. But maybe you could get it to go around here and at least eliminate one jump stitch. I hope that's been interesting and hope you have fun creating your lettering. Please comment below if you've got any questions, and I'll try and answer them as soon as I can.